Welcome to inthinkment.com. Today we're thinking about fractals and their practical use in everyday and how they're all around us. So fractals are in nature. This is a nautilus fractal behind me. It's a spiral and kind of floats in the sea, controls the chambers. It's a living organism. It's got a fractal geometry to it. Today I'll tell you the story of my dad, and I've done some analysis of his patent he invented the industrial compactor machine as a way to be environmentally responsible. So instead of burning trash in apartment buildings, incinerating them, and having a $10,000 smoker thing to clear the smoke, he invented a compactor machine. And when I was drafted in 1968, went to boot camp, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, came home and to see my dad, and he had a factory in Passaic, New Jersey. Now I say factory, it was a converted liquor store. Okay, how did he get this invention? I know Duncan likes entrepreneurial stories. So he couldn't get a job after he divorced my mother and left the children, and I'm the oldest, and we're in Washington State. And my mother called into the place he was working, which was IT&T at the time. And in those days, in the early 60s, you weren't supposed to desert your family and take off with a secretary that was 18 years old and take a new job. Guess where, John? Brazil. And so he's getting on the plane, going to Brazil, and he finds out he's lost his job because AT&T says, "We don't go for that, Mr. Boje. You and the 18-year-old secretary are both fired." Well, that's all well and good but the rest of the family had no money. Anyway, so I go through high school. I'm one of those acting out teenagers anyway. He took me to New York from Washington State and said, "You're going to meet my new wife to be." I think they were engaged at the time. He says, "You say one thing, you're out, on the street, okay? That's the rule." I said, "Sure thing, Dad." Well, it turned out I liked this woman. She was great. She was educated in British boarding schools and read novels all day and very intelligent, very bright. Not a hugger. She wasn't a hugger. I don't know, that British thing, not a hugger. But you could talk to her. She made little meals for you, not once in a while, complaining about it, but she would do it. And it was nice. It was not the kind of crazy stuff that I was used to growing up. So it was nice. And we got along, and I love her. She's nice. So, but my dad couldn't get a regular job because he didn't have a referral from IT&T. So he's cleaning out vats in a paint factory. I mean, if you've ever tried to clean paint off your hands, I got a little paint here from doing some elastomeric on the roof today. Stuff don't come off. You need turpentine and all kinds of stuff. It's nasty. So, and he's earning money best he can. So in the apartment building he's in, the super goes on vacation to Florida and says, "Hey, put out the trash once a week." So he's hauling like 30 trash cans out of the basement of this apartment building. And he says, "This really sucks. It's a lot of work. It's humid. It's summer in Passaic, New Jersey. If you've ever been there." And so he said, "Well, okay." He takes out a piece of paper from the trash, an envelope. He's got a pencil. He draws an invention that would save him so many trips to the sidewalk from the basement of this apartment building. And he says, "You know what? You got to be able to compress this stuff. And I'll bet if you had a this device with a plunger and into a kind of a funnel, and the plunger had teeth on it, and he drew it all out. So before he even finished putting out the rest of the trash cans on the curb, he went to a phone booth. Phone booth at that time had actual phone books. And he opened up the phone book. Hi, Anton. We're live if you're wondering. I'm telling the story about my dad and his first big invention. So just to recap, he'd drawn on an envelope an idea for a machine, and he goes to the lawyer section. He figured lawyers can do things, closes his eyes, lets his finger drift down the page, stops, and then opens his eyes. Saul Permit was his name. Now, Saul, he had the biggest real estate legal firm in New York City and did a lot of work in New Jersey too. And my dad starts to sell them. I said, well, look, I've got this idea of how we can revolutionize all these places where they haul trash, and they got these dump sites, and it's nasty, and they try to burn it, and it's polluting. I've got an idea. I can compress garbage tighter in a smaller space than if you burned it. I go like, yeah. And this could be a really good investment for you and your clients. I got the idea. I'm a self-taught engineer. I was an engineer in the Navy. I was an engineer for IT&T, and I can build this machine, start the business. We can sell it. And it's a trash compactor. Oh, okay. So Saul says to himself, well, maybe this could be a loss for some of my millionaire friends to invest in, so they can write off mass quantities of cash and pay less taxes. Anyway, so that was the financing for his invention. And then they rented an old liquor store. So I'm coming home from the military. You staying with me? I'm coming home from boot camp. Have you ever been to boot camp? Probably nobody has been to boot camp. Maybe Duncan.
Duncan.
Did you go to boot camp? Okay. I'm not talking about wishy-washy boot camp in the 80s. I'm talking about 1968 boot camp, where they could still kick your ass with their boots, It was called boot camp because they would be kicking your ass with boots. Anyway, guys want to go on sick call in the morning. They say, oh, you guys want to go on sick call? Come up here in the front. And then they'd take them behind the podium, and the drill sergeant and assistant drill sergeant would kick their ass. I mean, I never went on sick call, not once. Anyway, so I come home from boot camp. I got my dress screens on. I'm a private. I got my chevron for the little private thing, And I got little brass buttons, and I got the sharpshooter badge for my M16, M14 actually, sharpshooter. So I'm all proud. I get into this liquor store. I said, Dad, I'm here from boot camp. He said, hey, I need your help. Go get me 20 garbage cans around the block full of trash and bring it down here right away. I said, Dad, I'm in my dress screens. He said, I need your help, David. I need your help. Go get these trash cans. I said, well, these people are going to wonder why I've taken their trash cans away from their buildings. I'm going to get arrested. He said, no, it's all right. Just tell them that crazy inventor wants the trash again. And so I went, and then they looked at me. I said, crazy inventor. They go, okay, yeah, just bring it back when you're done. So I cart all these trash cans. I go, Dad, why do we need 30 trash cans of trash in here? And they kind of stink, And he said, well, you wait. 17 white chauffeur-driven Cadillacs are going to show up here in a few minutes. I go, yeah, right. Because my dad's a storyteller. I did not believe half the stories he ever told me. Well, maybe 90%. I didn't believe him. But lo and behold, They pulled up like in a procession. The mayors of the biggest cities in New Jersey stepped out, 17 of them, crowded around this machine. I call it the monster. I mean, it was the grinding of the gears. There was sparks flying. There was oil coming out of the fittings. They were standing back in horror looking at this thing as trash went into it, and a plunger with teeth would crash it, and the smaller plunger would push it out through the funnel, and it would go into a paper bag, and then he would tie it all up. Now later on, he did an innovation. Like if that wasn't enough, you had to have time. You had to have these sensors that sense when the plunger's coming back, when the plunger had too much pressure on it. Somebody had put an iron bar in there or something. Not going to cut through that. Anyway, but he was in the 111 North 11th Street Brooklyn phase of the business. There was a maraschino cherry factory on the floor above. Whole place reeked of maraschino cherries. You wanted to just drink it right away. It was amazing. And my dad had my brother and I this was after I was in college, and he's still working on getting that machine out. And he says, I need somebody, there's the mafia people are coming in through the roof and they're stealing all of our machines. I said, Dad, there's no mafia. That's like Godfather stuff. No, that's it. And they come through the roof. They come and we have to buy all new machines every week. So you or your brother, you alternate and stay in there. And I go, okay. So I'm there with the 30-06 and I'm guarding the factory. This is the kind of crazy stuff of why I went to the University of Illinois and didn't go to school in New Jersey. You know what I mean? I went first to, I did go to Princeton. Outside Princeton was Rider College, Rider University. I went there for 4 years, and now they were Rider College, now Rider University, and then I went to Illinois, and then I got my first job in UCLA. Do you see a trend here? I'm moving further away from Dad because he's surrounded by con artists and investors and people who want to get rich quick with his inventions. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if you know Tully Savalas. You got to be really old, this detective show or something. Tully Savalas invested in one of my dad's machines. Anyway, my dad sold the thing. My brother was up there working too, my younger brother, Steve. And they would go to apartment buildings and businesses that had multiple stories and sell these compactor machines for about $8,000. Competition was about 10, 15 grand. So they were doing pretty well. And you had new legislation that Sam Permit was forcing through. The lawyer, remember the lawyer? He's trying to get everybody in New York, New Jersey under the law where they got to do something environmentally sound. So they got to buy my dad's machine or a more expensive machine. So the thing took off, and they had enough sales they could sell the whole business for $3 million, which in about 1978, which was the year I filed my dissertation. So you ask, why is Boje in the business school when he's such a critic of business? Because I was going to manage my dad's multi-million-dollar business, and it never happened, because the man lost $1 billion in less than a year after he sold it and paid his partners off. 3 million, paid the other two partners $1 million each. So he's created you've heard the PGA. He created the Mid-Atlantic Golf League as a competitor for PGA. He started another business same year, mowing lawns for the Navy, and I used to run the crews when I was home from college. Believe me, you do not want to run a crew of a bunch of college kids with horse, First of all, they're lazy. Okay, they're not trained. They they get there and they say, "Oh, well, let's play with the machines and put a little oil here and a little gas here and crank it up." 2 hours later, they go on the field. Okay, an hour later, it's time for a break. They take a break. The break is supposed to be 10 minutes. It's an hour. Then it's time to go to lunch. So they go to lunch a half hour before the lunch. They come back a half hour late. They take a break in the afternoon. They shut down. You get like 3 hours labor out of an 8 hour day. I don't like being a foreman. I don't like it at all. So, but I tried to help my dad's businesses from failing, and within a year, he lost $1 million in all of three different businesses were flat, over overextended. You know, the thing in the business world, you don't do that. You don't start three businesses. You can barely do one in a year, and you don't invest all your capital. And in 1977, he had put his $1 million, most of it, 700,000, into one of these stock house things. And after 79, I think they were insured against your losses. But at that time, they weren't insured. He bought Rolls Royce stock and a bunch of other stocks he thought would take off, and they were doing okay. But the whole house failed. That means all the stock holders fail. That means they're all out of business, out of money, no money. In other words, you put in 750,000, turn around the next day, you got zero. So that left him 250,000 to run all these businesses, the golf league, the grass crews for the Navy base, and he was also taking care of parking lots for grocery stores. Anyway, so he had all these crews, all this equipment, all this stuff, and it was just, it was sad to miss a payroll and have all of these people wanting their money, which is valid, very good, but they would put their foot on the accelerator of all the equipment, the grader, the dump truck, right, the tractors, and blow up the motors. And it was my job to go out there on the weekend and fix it all, knowing that next week would be the same crisis again and again. Anyway, so that's my story. Now, how do fractals play into this? The fractal storytelling. I did an analysis of the patent that he filed, first in 77 and then an amendment thing in 78, 79. And I looked at 50 other patents that had used his patent and in their innovations, right? Because that's what you do in the patent business. In fact, when you get your patent, you have to identify all of the other patents that go into your machine. Like eventually he switched from a mechanized machine, he needed more power, to a hydraulic machine. That means he had to get up to speed on the science of hydraulics. He had to identify who had patents for different things. And he got the patent for the cylinder coming out of another cylinder, because that's how you could break the log jam. If you didn't have that, the compactor thing that he designed wouldn't work. So essentially, the spiral behind me has this pattern. Let's go this way. Yeah, like that. And that's exactly the same pattern. If you look at the patents that are using his patent, Daniel Quinten Boje is his name. Use Dan Boje's patent. It forms almost a perfect Fibonacci spiral, and or logarithmic spiral if you prefer.
And that spiral is that, I know, David, last week we talked a little bit about the incredible complexity of the limited and the unlimited in Pythagorean 3-4, which eventually makes that 7. And that 7 is the virginal spiral, right? The reason why the virgin, right, it is that reference of seven, right? And the spirals is not because of sexual purity or anything like that. It's because the spiral itself, even with our geometer tools, we cannot close that seventh arc, right?
Right.
Unless we approximate that angle.
Oh,
So when we don't approximate the angle, when we let it goes into this seven, which is non-repeatable,
mm.
but very similar time. And this is fractals.
Oh, it's very,
It's just so, I really love what you said about the pattern analysis
thank
and those histories that build and spiral out. It's just, you're so on target with this stuff.
Oh, I hope I wasn't completely out to lunch with it because I can feel the spiral building
Right.
even in the earlier part of the storytelling I was doing today. I hope you could feel this spiral energy as I'm moving in relation to my dad and his invention, and I'm getting pulled into that whole spiraling, and it takes off. And then the downward spiral is he's losing everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a broken man. He was tough, self-taught engineer. It just was something that he wanted to be successful. And oh, let me show you this image. This is the compactor machine, what one of the original models looks like. And try to get out of the way here. You can see that stuff comes down. There's a big cylinder. There's cylinders inside pushing. There's big teeth, and then it goes into the bag. It's got the maraschino cherry extract being sprayed in there. Thing smells great, you know. It's it's really happening. Let me see if I can show you another image. Um, Here's some of the design drawings he did from the original patent. And you see the
Mm-hmm.
cylinder going through into that kind of funnel thing on the right. And everything's numbered, and he's got to identify each piece of it and what items were part of this and what was happening. Here's another image from, you know. So these were part of the drawings he did as an engineer to get that patent. Uh, so, yeah. So,
Really interesting stuff. I think patents in general, like NMSU has a dedicated librarian for patents, right?
oh, yeah.
And so she knows the ins and outs of this stuff, and it's really quite interesting, like what you're talking about, David. It's
Thank you,
just
Craig. Well, here's the quantum angle. This is what woke me up in the middle of the night a week ago. It's the quantum thing here. I used to, when I was hanging around with Tanya and everything, she did her dissertation on quantum spirals and or fractals, mostly on the fractals. But you know, we were into Karen Barad, and that Strand did her dissertation on Karen Barad, etc. And I thought, oh yeah, fractals. But I never like thought about it. You know, okay. Here's the thing: the material discursive, right?
yes.
Material. Look behind me. That's a kind of discursive. It's a drawing. It's
Yep.
on paper, right? Patents filed at the patent house, you know, and then that's a discursive. All this discourse about the patents and the patent rights and the drawings and blueprints and all that. Then there's the materiality. What's the materiality? Let me go back to this other drawing so you can see it more clearly. Yeah. So there, right there. What's fractal about that? What's the materiality about it? It has to do, think about different materials made in different places in the world. all the different kinds of metal, the copper wire by Duncan, all the different things.
Yeah.
Uh, think of the maraschino cherry extract. That's a materiality. All these different materials are brought together in the invention, right? Now that he creates this invention, and other inventors and entrepreneurs, they file patents with pieces of his invention. They, most of them, build material things. So the material discursive there is happening across time events
Yes.
from
And
19.
there's also the practice portion of it, because we often think of discourses as not simply the image and the idea, but also the practice. So you've got that contained within, right? And the memory of other practices that he utilized. It's just a really compelling, when you break it into the fractals, it's really compelling to me.
Yeah, think about taking this machine, going into a big apartment building, banging down a wall to get the machine to fit under the chute, cutting the chute, getting it in here. You need a door there. You can see the door because sometimes you can't imagine the stuff people throw down a garbage chute in an apartment building. They throw bed rails down there. They throw hangers down there. Your machine has to deal with all of this random stuff. So that's more materialities. You know what I'm saying? So
Yes.
this
You
is
know who would love this is Myra J. Hurd.
what is that?
Myra J. Hurd would freaking love this story because for years she was called the garbage lady, right?
She would pull out
And
the straw thing. Yeah.
exactly, no, and she did so much more, like with the toxic trespass, the toxic waste, She would freaking love this story, David.
Yeah, okay. I came home one week and a garbage truck, and he had this place in Little Falls, New Jersey. It was after the Passaic thing, and he's still with the 18-year-old, except she's about 20 now. And they're on, I forget the name of the river, but it was a river there in Little Falls. Maybe it's the Little Falls River, I don't know. And a garbage truck pulls up to the front lawn, backs up, and empties all the garbage onto the front lawn. Can you imagine this? I mean, nobody grows up like this. Nobody grows up like this, with this kind of behavior happening. You never knew what was going to happen. Um, so when he lost all his money, he also lost the Jan. Jan was her name. Was 18, now it's about 20, maybe 21. And when he had the money, not only did he start two businesses, and then he had to suffer the loss of 750 grand, he bought a yacht and had it in California. And sometimes he'd be in California, sometimes in New York. And they were living the high life, pretty well. But then when he lost everything, including the yacht, she bailed. Said, "That's it. I'm out of here." And I don't blame her. You know what I mean? It's not a life garbage dumped on your front lawn, just crazy things going on. So but before she left, he bought her a brand new pink Jaguar V12. The thing was insane. I mean, it had more chrome under the hood. It had more pieces and parts that I'd ever seen before. He said, her dad said, "David, take it around the block." I said, "I am not getting anything. I'm not touching that thing." My brother, who is much like my dad, he just jumped in and floored it and spinning gravel up the driveway and took off with it. But she took off with the pink Jaguar. I'll never forget that, the pink Jaguar. You know what I mean? Um, so
So I love the fact that there's actually an ecological component of this story as well,
he was,
right? He was attempting to change practices, which is a very difficult thing, material discursive practices, right?
if
And
you grow up with
it's
a visionary
yeah,
inventor, you know what every moment is a surprise. But if you understand the fractal, the upward spiral, the downward spiral, you can kind of predict if something's going to get better or something's going to get worse. And the fractal has its ups and downs. So I hope you've enjoyed today's story telling about fractal storytelling. This is David Boje, and we've got our new website, fractal-storytelling.com. Be online soon. In the meantime, you can catch me at davidboje.com. All right. Have a wonderful day and tune in again when we talk about fractal storytelling.